way.
Right now. No.
Right now. Hey, everybody.
Hey. So we're back after not having been here in a long time. And somebody tweeted us and said, "Where have we been?"
Yeah.
And my response
working.
was and is, "We're principaling." Like, I'm so busy. I'm so tired.
So
Thank you,
busy.
but thank you for those of you who asked where we were, because that was nice.
And our goal for this spring, even though it really doesn't feel like spring in New Jersey, but our goal is to podcast more frequently, and so hopefully you'll expect more.
And our book is done. Like, we've
Yes.
been through many revisions. It's almost off to production, so we'll
That's
have more
awesome.
time for that.
Or
learning how to joggle.
Is that a Corwin book? Are you guys going to be at the thing in Massachusetts as Corwin authors?
We are.
Yes. Is Jessica?
Cool.
Yeah.
Jess, are you going? No.
Where are we going?
I'm going because Boston is on my bucket list.
Is that my joggling trial?
It is your jog. The joggling marathon.
I think it's
in
called.
August.
What is it called again, Bob?
Empowered learning?
Yeah. You didn't get
Yeah.
something on that, Jessica?
I get too many things.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably auto-deleted it.
It's like the first
I'm
weekend in
working on
August.
Inbox Zero.
It's like Thursday, Friday, though, isn't it? It's during the week still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't be able to.
All right.
Well, it's actually going to be really hard. That's the first
It'll
week
be
of school
like
here.
really sunny
That's-
and nice.
Yeah, school's starting that early, Bob. That's early.
Yeah, but also we have like 6 weeks of school left.
Wow.
That's because in Missouri, when it snows, like if there's like a snowflake, you cancel school, and so you have like 20 snow days, and then you just have
This
to.
is the only thing that the upper Midwest has on us, is like dig on snow days. That's all they have. And the Packers, that's all they have.
Oh yeah,
We don't
and
have
the
it.
Badgers.
We have the Lions.
The Duke thing had to hurt.
We did good.
Way to kick us while we're down, Bob.
Let's go back to joggling.
I know.
The
basketball,
we went
though.
live. We were talking about running and juggling while running, and that's joggling. So if anybody
So
has
that's a
that
thing.
talent out there, we'd
Yeah.
love to have you on the show. Just kidding.
So you can, if we get one of those GoPro helmets, though, we could.
Oh, those are awesome.
Well, it would be cooler if you were dribbling 3 basketballs while you were running.
Well,
And wearing a
GoPro.
blue tuxedo.
And wearing a blue tuxedo, not just either or. Ooh. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, so that conversation came about as we're all working on our health and running and getting ready for races or not getting ready for races.
Yeah, and Bob is going to be running his 11th marathon tomorrow.
Yeah, very slowly.
Very
Still
slow.
counts.
Yeah, I don't have much energy after this week. I'm pretty blown after a week on the road. So.
Well, yeah, that's what we wanted to talk with you about today because, I mean, obviously you were tapering down for your marathon, so you decided, well, I'll go and visit the Lakota Sioux Native Americans, which
Yeah.
like it was a really cool experience. So how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, this is a great like PLN story, right? So I'm at
Did you introduce Bob?
Oh,
I'm
that's a good
sorry.
point. And I
Did we
don't have my
introduce him?
cool lower third on, so that throws everything off.
I'm sorry, we'll edit that in later, Bob, but hey, this is
We
Bob
don't
Dillon.
edit at
I
all.
know.
Just so you know, that was a joke.
If you've been listening to our show, you know who Bob is because we've had him on before. When
Yes.
there was soccer happening, World Cup soccer.
It
had-
was.
He had a
And he
scarf on in
listens
like
to-
August.
And he listens to the Principal PLN while he's joggling.
Yeah, so this is Bob Dillon, not the
sure you
singer.
can't tell people that.
Yes.
All right, I got it. So I'm actually the director of technology and innovation at the Afton School District in St. Louis, Missouri, and a 14-year middle school principal prior to that, in a couple different places here in St. Louis. And then, as I've been telling people lately, all things ed tech in St. Louis seem to somehow come through my inbox, and so that's the other part of me.
That's awesome. So, tell us the story about how you got involved with the Penn Lakota 15 trip.
Yeah, and so, like I was saying, great PLN story. I'm at EduCon in Philly, and evening reception. Joe Mazza, who many of you guys know, was there and talking about the study trip that the Penn uh, Graduate School of Ed takes every year. I think they went to Alaska, they went to Finland, and now they spent the week on the Pine Ridge Reservation. They Joe said, "Oh yeah, we take somebody from out of network every year," and that was like midnight one night. And "Oh yeah, that's great." I woke up the next morning. I said, "That's not an opportunity I should pass up." So I kind of followed up, and next thing you know, I was the out of network person attending the trip all week, and so it was just both serendipitous and opportunistic on my part. So it was fantastic.
That's awesome. So what, for those who were not following the hashtag, I mean, I really recommend that you follow hashtag Penn Lakota 15 because there's a lot of really good blog posts that were out there and a lot of pictures and things like that. So you were pretty active with your blogging. What are some of the highlights?
Yeah, so we went there to really just kind of really dig deeper into what the education system looks like on an Indian reservation. There's so many variances. So the education system there is actually run by the Department of the Interior and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and not really Department of Ed. And so that was a huge difference. And then the Pine Ridge Reservation is the fourth largest reservation in the United States, and they deal with extreme poverty like I've never seen in the United States. And so that's, as we all know, that wraps around our schools and impacts us. But the impact there is tremendous. But our job really was just to learn and then through the hashtag and through social media raise awareness around the country about really what is going on there. The numbers are devastating, but you don't want to always dwell on the negative things. But for folks that don't know, it's a place that has a level of poverty not seen anywhere else in the United States.
So I have a little bit of experience. Actually, when I started out teaching, right after graduating, I substitute taught. And where I am from originally in northern Minnesota, we're surrounded by 3 Indian reservations. So I did some subbing at one of the schools on the reservation. My aunt still works there. And, the poverty, like you think poverty, and it is such a different and extreme poverty with so many deep-rooted, I don't even know. It's so different. It's so different, and you have to really, really care for the kids and do everything that you can for them, and it's such a different experience.
Yeah, I would just say that, you're dealing with numbers like life expectancy rate there is like in the 50s, so it's normal that people die in their 50s there, men and women. You're dealing with 85% unemployment rate. You're dealing with underhoused or too many people in a house, and they say 70% of all the homes have level mold in them. Mostly trailers, mostly HUD housing. The wellness level, the closest emergency room is 80 miles away. It just is, I've seen a lot of rural poverty in Missouri, and you can get away from it in 20 minutes. Here, there's no getting away from it. Even short term, it's an hour and a half drive to get away from what's going on, even if to get good groceries and fresh food. So, yeah.
So one of the things that you were talking about was looking at their education system, and it seems like it's much different, and I'm sure Jessica could talk to that too. So what do you see as the differences of their education system versus the one that comes from the Department of Education?
Yeah, one of the big things is that the education system there is probably the system that's working the best of all those other things I mentioned, housing and food and wellness and healthcare. We were in some beautiful schools. places that you and I wouldn't mind being I mean, you walk around, the floors were clean, the places were good. Met a lot of great teachers. We visited 5 different schools while we were there. You know, they suffer a little bit from the lack. There's 13 tribal schools on the reservation. There's 2 parochial schools. There's a private school. There is a Bureau of Indian Affairs school, which is totally governed by somebody else. And of those 13 schools, there's 10 different school boards. And so there's just this like fractured governance. I think they really, really struggle with that fractured governance. But the buildings themselves, the teachers are working their tails off. And so all of that is really good about the system. It just, every day there, you know, it's a struggle to get kids to school, especially in the winter because roads don't get cleared. And so, yeah, and so the big thing is just the fracturedness of it. You know, you have, you know, 10 different curriculums in a very, very small area, and no coherence between, you know, no one's talking to each other. There's no connectedness at all.
Wow. Jess, did you find the same thing, and like where your aunt works, and also do they have to live on the reservation?
The staff.
Yeah.
See, where I'm from, it's not that far of a drive. It's not that isolated. There's a lot of Indian reservations in northern Minnesota, so there might be people that live on the Indian reservation but travel to the city Bemidji, where I'm from, and find actually a lot of them do. So it's not as isolated, but definitely the life expectancy, major alcoholism and drug use, and you know, it's hard for people to not feel like they can't make a difference because of, you know, everything that they're trying to do for kids, and they're just you know, just like any other poverty of what they're going home to, and it's hard to make a difference in education with children when there's not really a value for education with everything that they're dealing with. But there are just some really, really great cultural traditions, like the powwows and the things that they do value. Did you get to go to a powwow, Bob? Or
it was yesterday, and Joe Mazza took some pictures yesterday, so there's probably on the hashtag, but I did not. But yeah, the cultural pieces are wonderful, and they actually, one of their specials, as we would call them, is Lakota Studies. And so all the kids are learning language, learning culture, learning beadwork, you know, all those things. It's fantastic. That we saw that in every school. There was you know, there's a huge effort to save the Lakota language because the number of speakers is dwindling very quickly there.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess I would say there's a lot of really beautiful cultural pieces that have been getting lost with just everything that has gone on. I know where I was from, we had to learn Ojibwe. Even when I was in school, not on the reservation, that was part of trying to keep the culture. But as, you know, alcoholism and everything else sets in, a lot of the culture can like really disappear. Or if you've done research on, you know, Indian boarding schools back, you know, years ago, how that like tried to strip away their culture. It's really really interesting, but just horribly sad.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is that piece of, for a chunk of time, all the kids there were taken away to boarding school. And, you know, the folks that are now the leaders there, you know, we're talking about people in their 60s probably, the elders that are still around. They were the boarding school kids. And they're still kind of referred to that way. But, yeah, the whole idea was that they were supposed to, you know, remove the savage from them and all of that ugly coded language of the past, right? And one of the things that they're really trying to do is develop teachers there on campus. We visited the Oglala Lakota College that's there, and they're developing tribal teachers, and they're up at about 36% now. But they saw there was a lot of conversation about the divide between Teach for America teachers there and the tribal teachers. And I think there's a lot of tension there as they're trying to kind of grow up this group of teachers, because really their teachers probably have the most stable positions and probably are the most financially successful people on the reservation that we spoke to, were the teachers and the principals there.
Yeah.
Because there aren't any other jobs really other than here and there. No real small businesses, nothing like that. And all of the healthcare providers, there are a few tribal nurses, but most of the doctors and nurses that are there are brought in, and they live in kind of like housing for doctors there on campus.
So now, Bob, you don't work on an Indian reservation, right?
Yeah, no. This was just a visit there in St. Louis. We have we don't have a reservation. Their closest reservation's in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
We have just we have odds and ends remnants of the Native Americans that lived here in the St. Louis area, but nothing here close to St. Louis.
So what is your biggest takeaway then, now that you've had that experience? When you go back to your position, what do you take with you into your role?
Yeah, just the importance of coordination and communication. I was looking at it as on a systems level a lot of times, because it wasn't totally about education at all. It was about how far people lived apart from each other, how transportation impacted things, how there were programs that were happening that were awesome for kids that 30 minutes away they didn't know about. Mm-hmm. And we were informing them about these programs. And so, even in my own work, you think you're communicating and over-communicating, but you realize that, that level of what we do, and, all four of us do really well, is, communicate with our folks. We just can't do it enough. And it's just amplified and magnified tremendously there. And so that was my biggest takeaway to bring home. And also that none of us tomorrow can do something to fix the problem there. It's not our job to be fixers.
Mm-hmm. So, Bob, when Bob and I were at McCall about a month ago now, and you and I were talking about this trip, mm-hmm. and you had mentioned that you were taking one of your daughters. Did that end up happening?
It did, yeah. My 10-year-old daughter, who's now on Voxer and now on Instagram. This was like her coming out party for social media. So, yeah, she went, and I think it was just an incredible experience for her. I was impressed how she found her voice there. Like, people would be like, well, what are we doing next? And she's like, well, everybody said this was on the schedule. And, she kind of stepped up as a little adult. And that was really great to see. And I just know that 2-3 years down the road, the week we spent together might be what holds us together through those awesome teen years. And so, but I also think she got this perspective of Dad deeply cares about all kids, and not just his kids and the kids in Afton, but she heard me involved with some really deep educational conversations, and we had a lot of fun. We were in the car a long time. We had 600 miles yesterday, and that was like 2/3 of the trip. So, yeah, so it was a lot of driving, but I think she did great, and she documented and blogged and took a ton of pictures, and she also, I think, gets now when I travel that it's not like I'm done at 4 o'clock every day and I'm hanging out, right? Like, we were 8 to 8 grinding it out for 5 days. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long week for a 10-year-old. And that's a lot of different, a lot to, it's for an adult, it's a lot, and to take in and to, comprehend. Have you guys done, like, when you drove home, did you guys decompress at all? Did you talk about, has she kind of tried to put things into perspective at all?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been nice. It's actually nice for her to talk to, like, Grandma and Grandpa on the phone, for me to hear what's coming out of her, right? Yeah. And so she's been kind of debriefing with people about how things were. I just think she has a sense of what we have, and it's that piece of I don't know. I think she appreciates what she does have, and that she gets to go to a really good school and have good teachers and have resources, and so I think she took that away. But the one thing that I haven't mentioned is the thing that's really rocked them this year is they've had a incredible amount of teen suicide on the reservation. And so yeah,
even
and
in
so
adults, high.
What was
Sorry.
that, Jess? I'm sorry, I didn't know. Go ahead.
I was just saying, even in the adults, the suicide rate is very high.
Yeah, and so every school we were at had experienced that at least once. And I think it was a bit of exaggeration, but a couple teachers said there's somebody attempting or ideating every day.
Oh.
And, the conversation came up about how do you not glorify that but allow kids to grieve. I talked to a state champion wrestler on one day, and he said, yeah, it's been a hard year. Our new principal, we had so-and-so commit suicide, and they wouldn't even let us talk about it.
Oh.
And that was really hard. And, I'm not blaming. It's just they're really struggling about, do we have funerals in our gyms? That's the only space where everyone can fit together because there is one funeral home on the entire reservation. Where do we have these things if that isn't going to be where that happens? And so it was definitely consuming much of the thought. 3 older gentlemen passed away while we were there this week. They were having a funeral on Friday. They were grieving for another family. Certainly I'm not a psychologist, but the idea that the whole reservation has some level of post-traumatic stress wouldn't surprise me. It's just every day, nonstop, dealing with grief and loss.
Bob, I have a question for you. So what were some of the things, especially with all these social and emotional things going on, what were some of the questions that you got from the Native Americans on the reservation? Because I'm sure you had a lot of questions. You were soaking things up. What were some of the things that you were asked about?
Yeah, we had a fantastic guide for the week. She was from the Tribal Education Agency. Her name was Dana Brave Eagle, and I think that why do you care? Why are you here? And then how is you being here going to be any different than the hundreds of people that come through here all the time as, voyeurs of what's going on? I think there's a lot of apprehension about just outsiders being there, and so I think the questions were good-natured. I don't think we felt any animosity by any means, but there's just a lot of distrust, right, over time, that people show up, people say, hey, we're going to fix this, and then they leave, and there's no way things sustain. And so I think people are, why ultimately are you here just to learn about how we do things as opposed to everyone else that just comes to try to fix us?
Okay.
Yeah.
I also noticed that you posted some pictures, and it actually got me doing some research. So you posted a picture that you took of Mount Rushmore, and then that made me think of the other, is it Sitting Bull? The other
Crazy Horse, yeah.
Crazy Horse, yeah. So what were your takeaways from that? Because then you did go to that monument as well, which is still being under construction.
Yeah. It was one of those things where wasn't really high on my priority list to go there, but kind of others wanted to go. It kind of felt like we took an afternoon and detached ourselves from the experience, but there was a lot of pride around what's happening at Crazy Horse, and there's a gentleman who's been on that project who's passed away now for like 40 years, and now his 11 kids are a part of that, and the folks we talked to definitely felt like it was a great symbol and a reminder of whose land that is, but the 90 minutes to get to Crazy Horse, it was more worth the stories about going there, about this is where this ceremony takes place, this is why the Black Hills are important to our tribe, We spoke about Rapid City, which is kind of the big city there, and what they had to offer. And then the best part of that whole evening, certainly we saw Crazy Horse and Mount Rushmore, but we actually got a chance to meet with a gentleman who's, in his 70s probably, who's an author of a book that kind of talks about all the tribes, and just he was one of those people that you could like feel the power of his spirit there. And it was kind of the only chance we had to really kind of meet with a true kind of elder of the tribe. And so he was actually living in Rapid City, not on the reservation due to some health reasons. But it's one of those things that kind of happened on the fly, and it was one of the better moments of the trip. But you guys know how that happens, that it's usually not what you plan that makes the trip what it is. So.
Okay, I have something random to share, but it does connect for all principals to know. I have random. That's how I work. When you said Mount Rushmore, in case you haven't heard, there's a new initiative for, it's called Every Kid in a Park, I think. So fourth graders starting next school year can get, I don't know if it's the student or the student and their families can get in free to national parks, historic structures. So just when you said that, I'm going to have a fourth grader next year, so we're planning a Mount Rushmore trip. So I'll make sure to include a link to that in the blog post that goes with our show notes for this.
You do that.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth. It's like 20 minutes away to go to Crazy Horse. It's definitely worth saying. I did get this feeling that our person that was with us, who was in her late 40s, had never been to Mount Rushmore.
Oh my goodness! I haven't.
But it was a sense of like, why would I go see the white guys that invaded us?
Yeah.
Why it was that sense of like, that's why I haven't been to Mount Rushmore, and I was like, oh. Yeah, I guess we shouldn't forget about the fact that there's some animosity with those faces up on the side of the hill, right? And so I think I had missed that along the way. So a lot of we talked a lot about privilege and a lot about social justice and a lot about all of those issues too. I was with some fantastic principals from Brooklyn and Maryland and Virginia and Philadelphia who were also on the trip, and so it was a great learning cohort. And then what you always hope for is it's just another group of people to learn with and from as you go forward. So
before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask too, about the food and also your housing.
Yeah, fair enough. We stayed at like a motel. It was like the only motel that I saw on the whole reservation. We were near Kyle, South Dakota, actually about 6 miles outside of town. But this place was built because they get a ton of hunters up there, it really was like it was turkey season. And so we saw dudes in camo that were, up there. And I think that's why this place survives, is that they get a lot of folks up there hunting with guides that are from that area. So that is a little bit of employment for that area. So it was fine. It was like a 80s motel. It'd be like driving through a small town and going, I can stay at the Sleep Inn or the Snoozy Inn or the, it was that type of place. It was fine though. And then food there, it was kind of really sparse, right? We ate at the burrito stand twice for lunch, and literally it's like this small business success story. That's like a burrito hut in Kyle. And then 45 minutes away, there's a Subway. It's the only fast food place that's on the reservation, and it's in Pine Ridge, which is right across the street from the tribal headquarters. And so that was it. So, and then there was a coffee shop at a place that was like 45 minutes away. We spent a lot of time in the car, and we just learned, how much time for kids and adults is lost every day just in transportation. So many folks commuted 90 minutes in from Rapid City because that was the only place there was work, or that was the only place where there was real housing. So much of the day was just driving. And then one of the other real special moments of the trip was we went to the site of the Wounded Knee Massacre.
Oh, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so because we were with someone from the tribe, we were able to visit the mass grave that's there. So there's about 300 folks buried there on the site at a mass grave. And I was trying to think if I'd ever been to another mass grave site. Certainly hasn't happened in the United States for me. Maybe the closest was at Dachau when I was there, but in the United States we have mass graves, and that was eye-opening. A huge number of women and children killed that day. 1880s, and kind of have a sense of, if you've ever been to like Battle Bull Run or whatever, it's an open field and you have to kind of use your imagination. But up on the hill was the cemetery that was there, and we took some time to soak that piece in too. And so a lot of history, a lot of bad parts of our history in the United States are there at Pine Ridge, and there's just there's not a highway that goes through there. The two little tiny casinos they have there aren't as popular as they are on other reservations because there's no way to get there. And they really did get forced into some pretty tight little geography, and it makes everything really hard.
If anything, it just gives you reason to be grateful for everything that you have and where you're at.
Yeah, I left. I did leave some hopeful things. There were some real champions for change there. We met the executive director of the tribe. He is 30. He's a college graduate, Minnesota Duluth, and did a year of law school in Michigan State before he kind of got called back to lead the tribe. And so he runs 59 programs on the reservation. Yeah, 59. I haven't even read the list. I took a picture of it, and I want to go back and look at it. But 59 programs, and then he is accountable to 19 tribal elders who ultimately have the voting power. And he was talking about they didn't have the money to continue the kind of their Meals on Wheels program for their elderly, so that was going to get cut in May. They needed like $86,000 to keep that going because of food and refrigeration and transportation cost. They didn't have radios in their ambulances, so like if there was an ambulance call, you had to hope you were in a cell phone spot that worked. And so those were like a couple of his top priorities that he was trying to work on. But he said, I've been at it for 3 or 4 months. I'm just learning the politics of this, and if he can stick around for 3 to 5 years in that position, I could see him doing a lot of really good work. But we talked to principals and superintendents that got juggled around all over the place. We talked to former superintendents of schools that were teaching English because the pay differential wasn't that much and it wasn't worth the hassle. And so we saw a lot of like senior leadership folks that were still in the teaching ranks, and that was kind of ironic, but a lot of champions there. And we're still trying to figure out ways to connect folks like you, folks that listen to this podcast, in meaningful ways. But I think we're all trying to decompress a little bit before we decide that it's how we're going to attempt to support what's going on there.
That's great. Well, I mean, it sounds like Joe and his folks at Penn are doing some great things, and you're right. Yeah. I have followed that before, where they've gone to Finland and Alaska, and I think that's a great experience for them to do that. And now, going to a Native American tribe, I think probably opened up a lot of people's eyes, and hopefully make their experience, writing their dissertation and things like that, more meaningful. As Jess said, it makes you appreciate what you have.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm glad I went. I'm glad that Ellie got a chance to go with me. It's been the last 24 hours have been a little bit hard, just kind of reconnecting. I realized I was streaming the Masters in my car on the drive home, and I was like, how much privilege have I now given myself after being on the reservation for a week? So, yeah, it was just some things like that. It's hard to kind of get back in the swing of things here. So,
just wow. There's, I mean, just so much I can't even imagine what you guys are trying to decompress from, because, I mean, just listening to it, it's so much to think about, but actually being there, I can't even imagine what that's like.
Yeah. And, there was a moment where Ellie said, Dad, I wouldn't mind coming back to the Badlands and hiking and backpacking for a week. And just that piece of the puzzle was really cool to hear, too. So it was nice to have her voice. It's nice to always be talking about having student voice in space, but to actually pull it off and do it was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, Bob, we really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about your experience. And for those of you who are listening, make sure to connect with Bob. We'll put all the information in the show notes. And also, we want to make sure that your daughter's blog is highlighted in there as well, so people can see the great things that she's doing.
Sounds good. I will ship that up to you guys.
Perfect.
One last little tidbit. I didn't know this, but Bob has a book that came out last August, Engage, Empower, Energize.
Yeah, and another one coming out in May. I've been a writing beast.
Jeez.
Wow, what do you have coming out in May?
Leading Connected Classrooms. It's really about how connection and connected learning is about people, place, and planet beyond the tech. How it really is about connecting people together, connecting people to where they are, and connecting people to people around the globe. And I highlight 17 stories of Missouri educators that have done that really successfully. And then I build a lot of conversation around choice and voice and authentic audience around that. So it's a lot. I think it's just different enough from some of the other stuff we've seen coming out that I think it's kind of the next level of connected learning. And so that's my hope, is that people see it the same way.
So this might be more of a personal question that others listening to the podcast don't care. How do you find time and make time for your writing to be getting a second book out in May when your last one came out in August?
You guys know how that works. It's not that clean, right? It just takes forever for that to happen. So you guys know that. But
yeah.
So actually, when I took this new position and was not in the principalship anymore, it did afford me some more time to write. And I had some things in my head that were partially there, and so the first book is actually a bit of a narrative about moving from managing a school to leading a school, and so that was a really important thing. It really just kind of grabbed a hold of my work as a principal, so it was, you could call it my story, but it became fiction from there. And then the second one really encapsulated my desire to really dig into this connected learning idea. And so, I don't know, you find time, right? I don't know. Time exists. You just make it. And so I'm a journalism major to start with, so that certainly helps too. So I don't know, but I have been pretty tapped out lately. I have no more words to write. I'm supposed to be writing. I'm working on a book very, very slowly about folks that are parents and educators and our unique view about what education should be. And so it's in the very, very, very alpha, beta, maybe stage. And so I have a co-author for that, and I couldn't imagine that co-author stuff's for the birds, man. I don't know.
Tell me about it. Co-authors can be a pain to deal with.
They're crazy.
Hey, by the way, the marathon joggling record for 3 objects backwards is 5 hours and 51 minutes.
Oh, boy.
Oh, well,
Joe Salter. You have to do backwards 3 objects. You have to run the whole thing backwards, so that shouldn't be a problem.
No, I can't run the whole thing forward. So
yeah.
I should.
I saw a guy. Maybe
I think the category you were talking about, Teresa, was marathon bounce juggling.
Yeah,
three basketballs.
It was.
Yeah, 5 hours 21 minutes for marathon bounce juggling.
And
that's totally different.
Who holds that one?
Riley McGlitchin. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got this.
That's right.
My
That's
first
right.
time growing up in Bemidji, Minnesota, there was a man who always practiced, and I don't know, maybe he is in the world records or whatever, but he would bike backwards while, like, I don't know if he was juggling or bouncing three balls, juggling, like, upside, like, all I remember growing up is always seeing that man do that.
Yeah.
I didn't know your bike could go backwards. Like with you have
hey guys, thanks for doing this morning.
You're done with randomness.
he's tapping out.
He's like,
I actually
compressed, and you guys.
My daughter is running. My youngest daughter is doing. They have read, write, and run the day before the marathon. So if you run 26 miles, do 26 good deeds, and read 26 books over the course of like a semester, you do like a 1 mile run. To celebrate that at the end. So it's going on, and she runs in about 35 minutes. So I got to hustle out.
Well, have fun.
Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on.
Yeah, always, guys. Always good, and thank you, guys. And I'll keep you guys, and just I encourage you to stay aware of the things that are happening up at Pine Ridge, and just continue to tell the story and share as you can. That's the best thing we can do right now.
Most definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Out.
See you soon.